Hello. Good morning and happy Saturday again. We've done it. We have made 4 episodes now. This is going to be our final episode of our employment segment. And I'm so happy that we have increased some of our episodes because I really wanted to make sure that we were talking about employment issues and we were also talking about employment and disability topics. One of the things that I saw online today that I thought was really fascinating was there was a picture of a young man with autism. And, they didn't say if he was employed or not, but they did show the picture that he didn't like how all of the candies were all in disarray in the candy bin at a Walmart. So he spent the next 20 minutes reorganizing and layering every single candy box according to his perception. And, this is what I've been saying, that we're not engaging people. And, I'm still high off of my big Paul Spooner advocacy conference that I went to 3 weeks ago, where we really were talking about nothing with us without us. And this whole concept of, and people have now shamed me and told me that they're tired of hearing about my disability. They're tired of hearing me disability talk. But the problem is if you actually had a business about photography, you're always talking about photography. You actually have a business about fencing, you're always talking about fencing. You actually have a business about shoes, you're talking about shoes, earrings, whatever the topic is, you're talking about that topic. But when it comes to disability, it's such an uncomfortable word. And that's why we're doing these shows to hopefully influence people and bring some change to that. I cannot wait to introduce this absolutely wonderful guest today, Michelle Steiner. And she also works in the education system. And I have a funny feeling she's going to bring a lot of share. She also has a blog that she's going to tell us about that talks about her own disability stories and also some of the resources and advocacy work that she does. Michelle, welcome to the show and please introduce yourself.
Hello. Yes, I'm so excited to be here today.
Mhm.
My name is Michelle Steiner, and I live in Pennsylvania with my husband Ron and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I am a writer, a speaker, and a photographer and a paraeducator. And I work in a school with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I also have a blog where I write about my life with a learning disability. And I also feature my photography as well.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
How long ago did you get this job with the school?
I have been with my current employer for about 15 years now.
Girl, congratulations.
Thank you.
Was it difficult to get that job?
That was one of those jobs. Whenever I applied for it, I thought I'm just going to get on the sub list because I worked for them before and
Mm.
as a sub. And I was pleasantly surprised that they said that they were looking for a permanent paraprofessional to come in.
Wow.
And I began my job as a one-on-one for a student who was blind. And
Oh.
since then, it's definitely has changed throughout the years.
And was there any difficulties while you've been on the job? Like, have they had to do accommodations? Has there been problems on the job? Can you talk about some of those
Sure,
challenges?
sure, I can definitely talk about some of the challenges. When I first started out, I have dyscalculia, so I'm not great with
Mm.
math or I'm not great with codes, and my students were blind, and some of the stuff that they wanted me to do was more braille material. Now, luckily, I had a great person that I worked with that she did a lot of that and she understood what I was going through.
Mm.
And braille was like a code. And if you cannot understand math, you're going to probably have a hard time with understanding how to do that. And so I had some challenges with that. And then I had a student that also ended up, my job switched over to a life skills classroom. And when we would take the students out to do jobs, I had a hard time with figuring out, well, how do we prepare pizzas? So we had to do some talking with that as well. And then math has always been the big one, as I said, even with the brailing or just doing other things like helping students in the classroom with math. All the kids know, do not ask me for help with math. I am not able to do that. And I think that that's a really key thing, though, is that advocating for myself, because
Mm.
that also opens the door up for my students because they see that, okay, somebody else struggles with something. And
Role modeling.
adults, yep, adults can't do everything.
Right.
And yep, and that also shows me how to be able to ask for support, and it also brings awareness because a lot of times maybe some of the teachers I work with or adults that they may not understand that, and that's so important because you can't see my disability, so I need to be that advocate for myself.
Right. And then can you explain to the audience what life skills is or job coaching is?
Sure. Our life skills classroom has students with intellectual disabilities
Mm-hmm.
and autism and other disabilities. And job coaching is where we will go into different places of employment and we will show them how to do jobs. They'll work with them on how to fold boxes or fold towels or how to prepare food or other things. And that's
Mm.
to help them someday if they choose that they want to work in a job like that. I mean, they still have, there are options at universities now for students with intellectual disabilities and other disabilities to be able to be enrolled in college,
Mm-hmm.
but we're showing them, giving them some job skills as well.
Yeah, the Think College actually in Massachusetts
Mhm.
is a huge part of why intellectual disabilities got into college because it was, guess what? Advocacy.
Yep.
And people were fighting so people could have more opportunities. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I also think that it's interesting that they would have the expectation that you could just go into any job and be able to support someone.
Exactly. And I had to speak up and say, no, I don't understand this. And I
Right.
had to have, yeah, I had to have a meeting with our director and one of the principals of the time, and that was really difficult with a lot of that. But
Yeah,
we,
because how could they have the
mhm,
expectation is if like you're going to go into painting,
yeah,
right? And then like you're gonna have to educate these kids on how to put paint tape on the wall and all the skills. I remember
hmm,
I was trying to learn how to do a photography job that was like sports and in the schools. There was so many steps in
yep,
just getting the photography prepared before
hmm,
we could take a decent picture and how to pose them. And they had steps and rules and this and that. And I looked at them and I said, I would love this job. I would love the creativity part of it.
hmm,
I would love all of the things part of it. But the structure that you have, there's
yeah,
no way that I could process this on an everyday basis. Some people just got it so quick and they were so fast, and I was like,
yep,
But I don't understand how we could have the expectation where the school would have the expectation that people who are going out on life skills would be able to know. I would think, I'm a former
hmm,
job developer. I would think that there would need to be some orientation between the
yep,
life skills assistants and the students that are coming on what the expectations would be for that job. And then they would
hmm,
be like, oh, well, I think I would have a better time at the craft store stocking than I would have at the cookie shop
hmm,
putting things in the oven. I don't think I could get things in the oven very quick. I
right,
don't think I could
exactly.
make
Hmm,
pizzas very well. And I don't
right,
want to be yelled
hmm,
at, but I think I could actually, do the job at like a Michael's and put things on the shelves and set up the prep
hmm,
area for the craft programs. I think that might sound really fun, but I think there would need to be orientations so everybody's
right,
on the same page and not just
hmm,
sending people in there and being like, you're going to become a pharmacy tech and you're going to be stocking shelves and bagging groceries and doing carts. And that's what people with disabilities do.
right. And that was where I advocated for myself. And we had a lot of meetings where we sat down and we talked about that. And then I got moved that year again. My student came back, and then then she left at the end. But I
Oh,
mean, it took a while though. I did find another student to work with for a number of years.
wow.
But but it was that. educating, it was that talking. And I think that's so important though, because people
Right.
would just look at me and think, well, you look normal.
Yeah.
You should be able to do this.
Right.
And I think that's also a big misconception too, when people think, like, I can remember when I was in school, people didn't think I could handle college and they recommended to go to a trade school. Some of those jobs would have been harder for me, and learning
Right.
how to do it would have been more of a challenge than some of my college
Mhm.
classes would have been.
Correct. Well, and the expectations, I think,
Hmm.
I don't know if, for you, the expectations were really low, but the expectations for me were really low.
Hmm.
My chemistry teacher was madly in love with me in high
Oh.
school, and she was like, "You're so good at this. You should learn physics." And I was like, "Really? Oh, what?" And she was like, "Oh, I think you'd be great at it." My biology teacher called me a moron and a dumb child that will never amount to anything. And I was like, chemistry teacher thinks I'm the most smartest person in the whole wide world. Biology thinks that I'm a flunk and I can't do anything. And then the typing teacher said, "Well, you're really not going to be able to do much. And why don't you just learn typing so you can become a secretary or
Oh
just a
my
wife?"
goodness.
And I was like,
Wow.
"Really?" Like, I'm gonna do something in special ed because I gotta help these kids that you keep telling that we're all morons and we can't do anything. Tell me about that. And like, how does the administration treat the kids? And what are the expectations? And like, are some teachers really motivated? And are some still insulting and like making and demoralizing?
Well, when I went to school,
Mhm.
some differences too, but whenever I went, I was really lucky to get diagnosed early. And
Mhm.
I had a lot of, I had good teachers and I had bad ones.
Right.
But my mom and dad really worked with the school, and their whole goal was to set me up for success in life. They wanted me, my parents did not push for me to be in advanced placement classes when I went to high school
Mm,
because they knew that that might just be beyond what I could do.
mm,
But they did make me go to academic classes, and I had a learning support for math. Now, I did have one time that I had a teacher that was in middle school that thought her goal was to put everybody at grade level. And I was not performing at that. I improved, but then whenever I got stuck on how to do equations, she would not go back and reteach or meet me where I was at. And then the next year she said, "Oh, there's no regular ed math. Excuse me, there's no special ed math up at the high school." And I panicked all summer because I was like, well, what am I going to do? And yes, it was no surprise to me. I struggled in the basic math, and there was learning support math, and
mm,
the teacher goes, we got to move her into this. I don't know what to do with her. And that teacher wasn't always very nice in learning support, but I got through the class because that's what I needed to do. And I was doing well on all of my other ones. I made honor roll, and the teachers could see what I could do as long as you didn't put math in front of me. And science was never
right.
my big thing. But I really
Mm,
needed to have a resource room. I needed to have that learning support math. And a lot of our students now, they're put in a basic math
mm,
class, and some of them just are not doing able to do what a child can do in a basic class. So I think sometimes that can be a struggle for a lot of our students to do that. It's that can be hard. But I do see now we diagnose, definitely we're a lot more better on diagnosing.
yes.
We know that, and we're also better on transition services of what somebody's going to do whenever they're done with high school. When I went, they didn't do very much. I mean,
Non-existent.
right, they hooked me up with the Office for Vocational Rehabilitation,
Yep.
but they told me that I would most likely I couldn't handle college and suggested trade school. And then the psychiatrist that evaluated me told me I wouldn't go beyond community college. So,
Uh-huh.
and so I think that there's improvements in what we do now, but I think there's also some things that realistically I look at and I think I couldn't make it as a learning support student.
Well, and the whole fact that it's 2025
Mm-hmm.
and some of the same challenges are still out there. Yes, there's
Yeah,
improvements. Yes, there's change, but you're
right.
still having these roles, these educated
Mm-hmm.
roles telling us You're never going to amount to anything. You'll probably never go
Yep.
past community college. You're better off just being a secretary. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
Just accept that you're not going to be able to go far and make the acceptance
Hmm.
because you don't have the capabilities that most people do. We can show that and prove that on paper. And I was like, but you don't know what I'm capable of. We haven't tried anything. You don't know. You're
Exactly.
only basing it
Hmm.
on that report. I mean, we don't know.
I even find it amazing after I had my bachelor's degree and I was trying to, because I don't drive, I needed to get that so I could take paratransit, which I don't do anymore, but at that time I needed that. And I can remember I thought they asked me, okay, fill out what you'd like to do with your life. I thought, okay, I'm gonna really, yeah, I got my bachelor's degree. I'm going to fill out what I really like. So I thought I want to be a caseworker. I want to look at, design, write articles and put pictures to magazines and do media reports. And they said, based on these scores, she's not going to be able to do any of that stuff. So we're just going to exclude that from. And I find that really funny because I write articles now. I've had photographs that have been featured, and the only disability that I've had has been math. And if you're not going to ask me math questions, I can do a lot of things with that.
Well, and my brain and my verbal skills are
Hmm.
really high.
Yep.
So you're gonna ask me to try to organize I mean, yesterday I was very proud of my organizational skills on my closet, but you're gonna ask me to like do something different or
Yep.
try to put order somewhere with my executive functioning.
Hmm.
And I can't. It's
Yep.
sometimes really hard. But does that mean that, and I'm a small business owner, but that
Right.
means I can organize all these things in my head. Like I am putting there
Hmm.
every single plan and every single thing that I've got to get done because I have a
Right.
big fashion show coming up and I'm launching my product. And so I know all these steps that I have to take, but the expectation was before I was going to fail, or the expectation was that, oh, you're not going to be able to do that because of X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
And I
Exactly.
and I still hate that
Hmm.
we put that on
Yep.
people. Like I was in a room of all these advocates, and I
Hmm.
love that we put it on the advocates. We're saying no, 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 despite any of the things that you're up against, you
Right.
can do this. But here's what I found in the room after me being in, and I took a leadership role while I was in that room. And Michelle, this
Hmm.
was so fascinating, was while I was in the room and I came back out of the conference, I realized that the lack culture, even though we were in leadership, was so strong in that room that many of them that don't have jobs, the only jobs that they believe that they can get now is in disability advocacy. And there's not that many disability advocacy jobs,
Right.
right? And so every single one of them that was not employed or wanted
Hmm.
work kept on saying, well, I'm going to just become a disability advocate. I'm going to become a disability advocate. And I'm like, but there's got to be more. There's got to be something
Exactly.
bigger, right?
Right.
We can't just be putting everything in just one box.
I agree 100% because advocacy can look so different in different ways too. Being a
Mhm.
disability advocate, I find when I work with my students, I'm trying to show them how to advocate for themselves right now because for so
Yes.
many of them, they're going to leave me and I hope every one of their dreams comes true, but their disabilities are going to stay. So sometimes they'll be afraid to ask for help. And I'll say to them, "Oh,
Yes.
what do you think you should do?" "Well, I guess I should email the teacher about my grades." And I want them to learn that. I don't want to be the person
Mhm.
that speaks up for them. I want them to learn how to do that
Mhm.
themselves. And I think so, if we just box advocacy into, well, I'm just going to be an advocate and I'm going to go into places that aren't accessible and I'm going to, uh, you know, fight for that, then but there's other avenues to that. And every time that we do that, I just think that just boxes everything up even more.
Mhm.
And we just need to open our eyes up and say, all right, this is how I'm going to advocate.
Well,
It
we
may even,
almost,
yep,
yeah, we need to define what advocacy can be. That
yep,
the only thing that some people think advocacy is Is the
Yeah.
standing up for yourselves or going into the legislation and fighting for your right.
Right. And a lot of, yep, exactly. And a lot of people think,
Mhm,
oh, advocacy, isn't that when you get up and you yell or something? When I say with kids,
mhm.
I say, no, we don't want kids to be yelling,
No.
but we do want them to learn how to do that. And I think we need to define that.
Right.
And I think that it's just going to look differently for in every situation too.
Right. So I think that, you know, where we have to also be teaching the kids,
Hmm.
especially before they leave, we need to be teaching them self-esteem, confidence,
Hmm.
self-esteem, confidence, and we need to be helping them learn what it means to know how to show up, know how
Yep.
to network, know how to interact with the human race.
I agree with you 100% because that is something that we see a lot of our students. Sometimes we're so focused on doing the basics of school, which our students need to learn how to do things. I understand that, but we need to go not only just try to focus on all those things that their
Yes.
weaknesses, we need to go on their strengths. What do they like to do? What are they good at? And use that as a
Yes.
motivation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And how to show up in those soft skills and how to interact with each
Mm-hmm.
other. And a lot of the kids that I deal with too, they come from some trauma backgrounds. So maybe they
Yes.
haven't had that model to them. So we try
Yeah.
to work with them on how we interact with each other and how we network.
For the parents,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk to the parents for a minute.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk to the teachers for a minute. For the
Mm-hmm.
parents, what do you think is the biggest thing that they need to be learning as these kids are getting older? So the seventh to, like, let's just say 11th grade.
Well, one of the things is I think a lot of the kids need to learn that their parents aren't going to be around forever. So you have to have the conversation that my parents had, the saying, you need to be independent. You need to have some kind of job that you're going to be working and be able to take care of yourself because we're not going to be around forever. And I know there's situations where maybe the child does need to be at home or does need maybe a group home facility. I'm not saying it's a one size fits all, but independence is so important. So I think that's a big thing. Finding out, giving them that space to have that independence is key. I think focusing on things that they are good at rather than things that they're not
Yes.
is important too. Because my dad, I remember he found a story when I'm second or third grade about a dinosaur that I wrote, and he said, "This is really good." And that just gave me that encouragement. The reading and writing became my world and really
Right.
helped. Yeah. And I think that's key. And I also just think that never giving up on your child. My mom and dad never gave up on me, and it's building that resilience. So my mom, we would spend a lot of long, cheerful homework sessions together. My
Hmm.
parents made me go to school, even whenever they knew I wasn't going to do well on a test. And but all I had to do was try. They didn't expect perfect grades. They didn't punish me if I didn't do well, but I had to try. And they even made me go to school when I was having difficulties with a peer because they knew that that was going to be something in life I was going to have to learn to deal with. And I think letting them learn to deal with failure is
Mm.
important too, and how we handle it.
Well, I wasn't so lucky. I didn't have the good parents. I had the good teachers, but I didn't
Hmm.
have the good parents. I mean, I had to go to school. I knew that I had to go to school.
Yeah.
I was scared because they were going to hit me and hurt me, the kids.
Mm, I'm
I
sorry
was
to hear that.
always afraid,
Hmm.
of what was going to happen at school that day. I was also afraid of being at home because I knew my brother was going to bully me. So I never
Hmm.
knew like where I was going to get it from. My mom was overwhelmed and anxious. So I never knew where it was going to get it from or how I was going to get it. And it was
Hmm.
always hard and confusing. So I wish that I had it easier sometimes, but I didn't. It was always very
Right.
complicated and very odd and
Hmm.
off. Um, and but now I want to reverse it to the teachers. What do you think the teachers are doing well? What do you think they need to improve on? And how can they help the students better?
I think one of the things that we are doing well is diagnosing people. That's definitely
Yeah.
something and having a plan where they have to follow along, or it should happen, what is going on. And a parent has that that right. And then the school has to, we know we're held accountable for a lot of those, for those plans to do. So I
Mm,
think that's what they're doing right. I think one of the things that's really hard is a teacher, especially in a subject they're really passionate about, has to understand that a student with a disability, they're not trying to give you a hard time, but they don't understand it. And they are struggling with it. And some of them are doing the best, the very best that they can do. So I
right?
think sometimes we might put blame on this child, that that child's unmotivated, that child's lazy, rather than saying that could be a
Yes.
kid that's really struggling with it. And uh and just because you're good at it doesn't mean everybody else is going to be. And to look for those different ways on how you
Okay.
can motivate that struggling learner. I think that can be something. But I also think there's a lot of great teachers that do know the subject and do care, even if a student isn't doing well, but they have a lot of pressure that's coming from people that are planning curriculums
Yeah.
as well. And some of that's just not catered to a student that has a disability or even other students who don't. And I think that our students need a customized approach. I'm not just in the schools, but I think even as adults,
Yeah, in society.
yeah, because we want to put everybody in this neat little tidy box, and people with disabilities don't fit in that
Yeah, we
box.
don't fit in that box. We
Yep.
don't fit in a
So
world that
if
I keep
yep.
saying, in a world that does not
Mhm.
fit us. So, one of the things that I want to end with,
Uh-huh.
because this was a delightful conversation, you're coming
Thank
back.
you.
I have no idea what we're going to talk about next, but you're coming back. So, but this is employment month, but we really wound up talking about, but I think in employment month, we're talking about the preparation for the students. And I think that's
Yes.
a really important aspect that we don't talk about enough, in transition. So I want to transition to the administrators, these experts, these supposed coaches, all of these people out there that come up with all these labels and say, we're here to help. We're here to do. We're here to bring forth this expertise to the
Hmm.
parent or the child. And my opinion, this is mine,
Hmm.
is that I feel and I fear it and I have concerns about it. And the reasons why I fear it and have concerns about it is because you're not bringing in lived experience and you're
Yep.
not talking to the resources that are out there and the agencies, the CPAP,
Hmm.
what is it called, where it's that special education consortiums that are within schools. I'm sure they have it in Pennsylvania, they have it here, but
Right. I'm not quite
they're like all the administrators and the parents and the educators that all get together and have this little program that they like
okay.
talk about disability, like laws and resources and issues
Right. Like some of
within
the
the special
advocacy
ed.
groups.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I know what you're talking about.
uh-huh, there's a
Yes.
special name for it that I can't think of
Right.
right the moment. But my concern is we've got these ADHD coaches and we've got these now
Hmm.
executive functioning coaches. And I don't even know what their credentials are anymore, but they're like these doctors, functional medicine people that are all saying that they're an expert in this disability arena. But which the problem is in my world is that the people with disabilities and the families with disabilities are excluded and they're
I
not
agree.
part of the conversation.
And I agree with that with you on that too, because no one's asking, well, what is your experience? We're just getting
Mhm.
information that the professionals have, and that is great because the
Correct.
professionals know what it is, and they are definitely necessary for diagnosing. But I think sometimes hearing somebody's experience, what is
Mhm.
that life like for you? Does this work for you in this way? And I'm very sure that if you would ask different people, they're going to have different experiences too, but you need to
Yes.
hear those options
Hmm.
so we understand what life is like with that. But even with differences, I've known people like you and like others that have had math disabilities. All of us may have different degrees. Some people are able to drive, some people can't, some people can
Correct.
understand this
Yes.
part of that. But when we all sit down and talk about our experiences, we talk about math and the difficulties
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
similarities that we have. And
Uh-huh.
that's our common understanding that we have of with having one. And I agree with you. I think that we do need to be including people with them in the conversation because
Yes.
it's nothing about us without us.
We have to have that because
Yeah,
without it, where are they going to get any of the factual information that's going to
right,
actually help them do their jobs better? And
right.
with us
Hmm.
saying, and then society is looking at it saying that they're excluding, well, now you're saying that we don't have expertise and we don't have this, and we're not saying that. We're saying
No,
bring in the people who actually do have the expertise so you can grow and you can do this job better from the
right.
learning ground you're going to get from bringing in the people who you're trying to serve. You're missing that envelope,
Right, because if you bring both people in, you bring the whole package
the
in. You bring
whole
the all,
enchilada.
yep, everything is
And
brought together.
and
Yep, I
that's
agree.
why that advocacy
Hmm.
conference that we did was the most important advocacy conference I've ever been through because
Wow.
it's all disability for 2.5 days with leaders who have disability, with independent living cancers that all have
Hmm.
disability, and everybody in that room has every single level of disability you can think of.
Wow. That's awesome.
And then I want to do an intersectional
Hmm.
conference where you take this doctor,
Hmm.
right? And this other doctor, and then
Hmm.
you bring in the people. Let's talk, or the mom and
Hmm.
dad who are like, blah, 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 blah. And this is what we did. Yes, this was really beneficial, but this is what we need.
Exactly.
And then they talk and there's dialogue happening, and you bring in the intersectional,
Hmm.
bring in the employer and you bring in the employee, you bring in the HR department and you bring in the
Yes.
recruitment department, but then you also find a person that has a disability,
Yep.
right? And then you have this intersection and we talk and we dialogue because, and then there's a whole bunch of audience in that room that's either disabled or a parent or whatever, and we're
Hmm.
now intersecting these conversations.
Exactly. And then, yep, right. And then you get that whole perspective of everybody, and then you bring it
The whole
together, and
thing.
right. And that's how we can make results that last. And we
And
give
that's
people
how we
choices.
change
Yep,
society's mindset. That's
exactly.
how we can make society's mindset think differently. I mean, I know that I'm a probably a total pain in the butt out there who's always saying, but society doesn't want this. I mean, I saw three things today and I was just like, well, this poor kid, he has a green eye and a blue eye and a cleft palate and there was something wrong and he was
Oh
beaten
my,
up at
mhm.
school
Oh,
and so he got cat. And I said, God bless him. I said, he's bullied so much he can't even make a friend. He has to have a cat. I said, I hope he becomes a millionaire over pet products,
right.
because I want more for that kid than him just sitting at home talking to the cat. And why isn't somebody? And then I found another story where there was a bunch of little preschoolers, and one saw those kids struggling, and the other little boy had so much empathy that he grabbed a hold of his hand and said, "No, I love you," and wanted to
Aw,
hang with him. Right? Like, so I was
exactly.
just like, see, that's how you build community, right?
Exactly.
And that's how you build community. And so, all that I'm asking and all that I'm saying, and I know people get so angry with me,
Mhm.
Michelle. I know that they're tired of me and they think that I'm a pain. But I'm just saying, can you have a conversation with me? Because you're hiding. You're not
Exactly.
even wanting to knock on my door. Why do you tell me that everybody else is DMing you and you have DMs all the time, but I get zero? I don't get zero, but I don't get
No,
a
no, of
ton of
course.
DMs, and I
Hmm.
don't get people asking to have the conversation. And so, what I get tired of is that no one's willing to have the conversation because
Right.
that word is so uncomfortable for society.
You're right about that because people want to use euphemisms like
Mhm.
differently abled or handy capable. And when you start
Those words
talking about that,
suck.
Exactly. And I have to, and I just think to myself, I'm comfortable with using the term disability. It's a fact of it's a fact of my life, and that's okay.
And
I'd rather have me say that. Yep.
I have multiple ones. I don't
Yeah.
have one. I have multiple ones. I
Same
told
here.
somebody
Yeah.
who said, "Well, we're so tired of you talking about the subject matter," that I had somebody
Mhm.
actually say, "We're so tired of you talking about the subject matter. Why do you always have to talk about it?" And I said, and she was like, "We wish you would stop." And I said, "Good. I'm really glad." I said, and then somebody also brought up
Mhm.
behaviors that, like, I'm almost a danger to society. And I said, "Well, good." I go, I said, "I have so many disabilities that I've got so much medical documentation that I've had my head to my feet examined." I said,
Yeah.
"What do you want?" I said, "We already know I have it. We already know that it's documented.
Right.
We already know these kids are documented. So what do we
Right.
want? All that we're
Exactly.
asking you to do is be a part of the equation.
Right.
Listen
I
to us
agree.
and be with us, and let's have that
Mhm.
dialogue." And I don't know why that's scary and hard.
I know exactly. I don't know either. I mean, it's just when I've had people, well, one person that said that I talked about having a disability too much.
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, a lot of people, or I also get people who say, well, you're never going to have you're not, nothing's ever going to be 100% perfect. And
right.
I'm okay. I understand that. But if other people did not fight for rights, women would not have the right to vote. And a lot of other people wouldn't have had those things. And it's still not perfect.
And look at how bad things are out in government right now.
Yep,
Right.
exactly.
And so
I
we're
know.
going 20 years, 30 years
Yep.
backwards from the ADA,
Hmm.
and now we're being asked to be silent again.
Yep.
You can't ask
Exactly.
us to be silent again
Nope.
because
It's not
you've taken,
happening.
because you are already taking everything away. Last
Hmm.
question, and then we're going to
Yes.
have to continue this dialogue again
Yes.
somewhere. But last question: has anything been coming up in the schools with all the government controversy? And we know that just some of these things have happening. So because of all the things that are happening in the government, they're all saying
Hmm.
that the special ed departments are falling apart. Are there anything that you're allowed to talk about, or is there any hubbub? Is there anything on the on the agendas or coming out from the schools right now that people are starting to, or are parents scared? Like, what's kind of happening on the scenes right now?
Well, this happened a few months ago. We did hear that we were going to be losing some federal funding, and then our state does not have a budget that's balanced, that has not had a budget that's been passed. So what's happening in our school and other schools is they're either having to borrow money, or our school is has dipped into their savings. So until we can get reimbursed from the state, and we have lost some federal funding. So that's always a real concern that, it always looms over, well, what is going to happen? I am concerned for my students eventually, like, will they have these services? Is that going to be available for that? And it's hard.
We have people out there that are so wealthy buying golf courses and buying strange things for,
Hmm.
in a society when our students should be the first priority,
Exactly.
especially with special ed. And
Yep.
and how fiercely we have to fight for so much of this, that
Hmm.
it breaks my heart that so many of things just are never happening well.
Exactly. And I just look at all those services. That's what made the difference. That's what enabled me to go to college. And only
Mhm.
10% of people with disabilities go to college, even with all these supports. And I'm concerned,
Me
and not
too.
saying everybody has to go to college, but
No,
even VOTEC or even a job or
right,
having the skills to work. And only 40% of, there's that 40% of people with disabilities don't have are unemployed.
correct.
And and I just think that if we really invested in programs where we could teach our children, if we could work with adults that had
Yeah.
disabilities and gave them those opportunities, there are so many more. people would be working. People would have jobs. People could go
Correct.
to
Yeah.
school.
People would have the things that they needed. And
Yes.
I've been writing every single day and I'm like, look, I
Hmm.
got my driver's license. Look, I
Yeah.
went to school. I had these
Hmm.
services. Without these services, I would have had nothing. I would have amounted to anything. I would have never
Exactly.
been able to handle a business. I wouldn't have had
Hmm.
any of the opportunities that I have now. And, taking away these services is going to be detrimental to these kids.
Exactly.
So
Because
rich
that,
people
yeah,
give money to the schools and the special ed programs.
they work. They really do. And it also educates the families
Well, and
because
you'll
my
help a
yeah.
ton of people. You'll
Yep.
help, you'll help future
Yep.
people, taking care of people's in hospitals, taking care of people,
Hmm.
feeding people. I mean, you'll be bringing people into society who are loyal and want to work. How many years did you work, Michelle?
15 at
I've
this
had
school.
my
Yeah.
massage license now for 10,
Yep.
and I'm
Exactly.
serving people. Yeah,
Yep. And I talk to people that do have disabilities that maybe don't have jobs and they want to work. They want to
they
have this
want to work.
opportunity. They
Yes,
seriously
they
do.
want to work.
And it's about finding the programs that can enable them to have a job and can teach those skills and to work with them. And yeah, people do want to work. I
People want to
agree.
work. I
They do.
And it's employment month, and we need to make some changes around making sure that people are either getting opportunities for small businesses or that they can actually
Hmm.
be employed by employers.
I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
You and I could have hours and hours of
We
conversation,
could.
and that delights me. I will definitely be returning you back on some
Thank you.
incredible topic. And I can't wait for some future opportunities that I'm going to figure out while I'm elevating disability and I'm elevating media. 2026 is really going to be my year to investigate how do we bring more of this and
Hmm.
how do we talk about these things like I'm a 60 minutes or something, and we talk
Right.
about the topics that really need to be talked about.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you so
100%.
much.
Thank you so much. Do you have any last minute words that you want to tell the audience? I think we told them a lot.
I would just want to encourage people that
Mhm.
success doesn't always come in the package that you expect, that it comes in something even better.
Definitely so. Yeah, I would agree with that. You're amazing. Cannot wait. This show will air next Saturday at 11:30 on
Okay.
the Prospera
Thank
Network.
you.
And you just watched Embracing What's Possible with Roxy. And we talked about a lot of possibilities today. And the passion when you get people together that have lived these life experiences,
Hmm.
we're offering a lot of nuggets and a lot of goodness because we've lived this. And this has been our lives for years since we were 4.5, 5 years old.
Yep. It's a
Sometimes,
lifestyle.
it's a
Yep.
life. It's not something that we just got diagnosed with yesterday. It's something that we grew up with, and we've always had these challenges and these opportunities and these fights that we've had to do. And they're our reality.
They are.
Yeah, they really are.
I agree.
Oh, this was delightful, and thank you again for joining
Thank you
me
so
today.
much.
And you'll definitely be back on Embracing What's Possible with
Oh,
Roxy.
yay. I'm so
Yeah, no, you'll
excited. Thank
definitely be back.
you.
I'll be figuring out a couple more different types of topics for 2026, and I'm sure there's a topic that you and I will need to discuss again. So,
Sounds great.
I've enjoyed having you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and happy Saturday to you. Join in next time when we're talking about leadership. And we're going to be talking about leadership development and disability and why those are important pieces of the disability world. Tune in soon, and we'll see you next time on Embracing Possible with Roxy. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm embracing what's possible, heart open wide, where fear used to whisper, now love is my guide. I'm not just surviving, I'm setting the pace, wearing my story with shimmering grace. From shadows to spotlight, I rise and I sing, embracing what's possible, changes everything.
hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez.